Okay, what we're going to talk about here today is some issues surrounding the release of the Epstein files and the Epstein pedophile island in general. There's a lot of confusion about the nature of this international scandal, and what I'm going to do here is give my take on it, and hopefully, if people are listening, they will learn something from it, because the points I'm about to raise I'm not really hearing from anybody else. So here goes. Number one, what you have to be very, very careful of, especially with very well organized, corrupt operations like this, is that probably the vast majority of people who visited the Jeffrey Epstein Island were completely innocent. They had a good time, innocent, clean fun, and went away with happy memories. They never saw or smelt anything criminal. This, of course, is all deliberate. The Epstein operation undoubtedly was using legitimate, innocent parties as the cover for the really sick and disturbing criminal stuff. That's white collar crime, 101. It's like money laundering. You'll have a legitimate business. 99% of its operations are completely clean, but every week someone walks in with a bag of money and it's laundered, kept in the safe. The filth is hidden behind, the cleanliness. And it's also an ingenious safety mechanism, because if a celebrity gets accused of being a pedophile, I meant to blur that word out, a P word, and they defend themselves, and are innocent and defend themselves through the courts, everyone is now highly, highly cautious about calling out the real perpetrators, because the innocent are defending their name. So just because so-and-so is on the list and visited the island is not evidence of guilt. Again, these international P-word rings, they love to network. They love to bring the great and the good into the association of their criminal enterprises to camouflage their crime behind. Okay, so be mindful of that. The other thing we got to be very careful of is the nature of the files themselves. I very much doubt that the files are at this stage accurate, and you have to bear in mind there are probably 3 or 4 different bodies of files. You'll have intelligence agencies, be they public or private, have so-called dry files and wet files. The dry files are the ones that they don't mind people finding out about, and they can, they have them to hand and can splash them around if need to. But the wet files are the ones that are the real sources of information, and these are the ones that aren't disclosed. So the dry files on the Epstein Island are probably pretty dull and probably don't really tell us anything we don't know. The wet files, the ones that are in the ones in the senior intelligence officer's desk safe, those are the ones that we want to look at. And then you have the problem of misinformation, disinformation, and faulty interpretation. The bad guys have undoubtedly flooded the airwaves with all kinds of disinformation regarding the intelligence files. Again, it's basic intelligence statecraft 101. If an operation goes bad, the first thing you do is activate Operation Fog of War. Okay? I suspect there's all kinds of nonsense in those files from seemingly credible sources. I wouldn't be surprised if Elvis Presley was seen, flying to the island. Elvis Presley, E.T. and the Loch Ness Monster are all on the lists. There's going to be all kinds of nonsense, and people would use this to incriminate and agitate their enemies. So don't be surprised if there's all sorts of false information. I heard that this happened and so went there. So that adds another layer of confusion over the files. The other thing, I think, which is even more sinister, is that a few people have mentioned this, but they haven't gone far enough. It's that the Epstein Island clearly was an intelligence operation. It was run by an intelligence agency. wasn't just Epstein, blackmailing people for his own entertainment. It was run by an organized outfit, probably aligned to a government. Now, this presents a very interesting problem because let's say that the Epstein Island was run by Country X, and it comes out that Country X was abducting hundreds, possibly thousands of underage girls to be brutally abused and used as sex slaves, some possibly not surviving the ordeal, and all of this being recorded so that the marks could be blackmailed for future soft power usage and manipulation. Well, that is a very, very hostile act, especially towards the United States, as it appears that a lot of the victims, a lot of the slaves were taken from America, and also a lot of the intended victims were, not victims, the targets were American as well. So, Country X is in a lot of trouble, and rightly so. I hesitate to use the term act of war, but it's not a friendly operation, and people would ask, hold on a minute, if Country X has been blackmailing, or potentially blackmailing, politicians, judges, senior businessmen, police officers, celebrities, journalists, intelligence officers, businessmen, you name it, the Country X has an enormous amount of power over us, and it's clearly not for our benefit. And if they have systematically prostituted hundreds, possibly thousands of innocent children, that's a serious problem. So, if the accurate files ever do see the light of day, you could be looking at some very, very hairy relations between the United States and Country X. Now, what is Country X? I got my own theories on this. It wasn't the UK, it wasn't Israel, it wasn't Russia, it wasn't China, it wasn't Japan. It wasn't a rogue arm of the CIA. If you know the history of the CIA wasn't set up for America's interests. It was set up by somebody else. The clue is Ghislaine Maxwell. I won't go into much detail, but look at her family and her father. Hint, hint. So I'll leave it there. So these are the things we got to be careful of. I think the reason why the Trump government is being very cautious about it is because they know that if it's released and if Country X is revealed, they got a war on their hands. Or they got a very hairy situation where this attack against America will have to be answered. And Ghislaine Maxwell, I suspect, this is pure speculation, but I suspect the reason why she's still alive is she's using what's called a truth bomb. Basically, someone somewhere has been told that if she winds up dead, obviously of natural causes, hint hint, that very damaging information will be released on her former employers. There's talk of her telling all as the DOJ. It's possible, although I wouldn't be surprised if she's going to spread more disinfo to get back into the good books of her former employees for her own safety. But yeah, look at her family. In intelligence history, you always go deep. You want to know, where was this person raised? Who are her people? Where was she educated? Who is her father? Who is her grandfather? What was her father during the Second World War? Who led him into the UK? What do we know about the person he used to work for in the Second World War? What do we know about what he was doing in the late 60s? Hint, hint. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So to sum up, firstly, the Epstein Island probably invited a lot of innocent people to it, and that's part of the cover. That was also as a trap. There's probably an enormous amount of disinfo in the files. there are probably multiple bodies of files: the dry files, the wet files, the really wet files, and you've probably got different bodies of files compiled by different intelligence agencies, which some overlap and some don't. So it's not a mess, but it's a tangle. And lastly, if the information comes out who actually ran this thing, you've potentially got a war on your hands. And I don't think Country X wants this war. I really, really don't think they want a war, particularly with the United States. So we'll leave it at that. God bless, over and out.